They said WB Calhoun could not be caught. They said a black man with that much fire in his eyes was either born dangerous or made that way. But nobody in town wanted to ask what made him. By sunrise, his face was on every wanted poster from the dusty road to the county line. Wanted, dead or alive. Some called him a killer, some called him Justice, and some were too afraid to call his name at all. Every face in this story carries history. Every character has a reason to stand, run, lie, or fight. WB Calhoun walks into town like a storm that already knows where it is going. The people see him, the law wants him, the past follows him, and before the day is over, everybody will learn the truth. A wanted man is not always the villain, and a quiet town is not always innocent. This is the new story. This is WB Calhoun, wanted, dead, or alive.
They called him Killer WB Calhoun, the left-handed rider of the Arizona dust. Folks said he could draw before a rattlesnake could strike. But Calhoun was not chasing glory. He was guarding what greedy men came to steal. Across 25,000 acres of sunburned mesas, hidden canyons, and sacred ground, he rode with one promise in his chest. The land was not for sale, and the old spirits would not be silenced. At his side rode Lady Taurus, sharp-eyed and fearless, able to read danger in the wind. When hoofprints marked the trail near the ancient stone chambers, she knew colonizers were moving by night. Hunter, Calhoun's trusted hand, followed them through dry washes and broken brush. Bison Bill, respected by the people of that land, carried warnings from camp to camp, standing with those who had protected these places long before Calhoun wore a gun. Their greatest charge was the Holy Grail, not treasure, but a sacred vessel tied to faith, memory, and power. In the wrong hands, it became a trophy. In the right hands, it stayed protected. So when the raiders came, Calhoun raised his left hand and drew a line in the dust. Behind him stood Lady Taurus, Hunter, Bison Bill, and the people of Arizona. Before him stood men who thought the land was empty. They were about to learn it was guarded.
This is a fictional Western legend from July 5th, 1862, when WB Calhoun ruled 25,000 acres of hard country around Struthers Creek and the Twin Mountains called the Twins. That afternoon, Calhoun came from the back stalls after breaking horses. When he heard a rider racing in from the east, dust rolling behind him like thunder. It was Bison Bill with urgent word. A ragged wagon train needed passage through Calhoun's territory. 20 wagons, 40 grown souls, 15 children, headed for New Mexico. Without a guide, the land would eat them alive. Calhoun allowed it on one condition: he would lead them himself. He saddled up with Bison Bill, called Hunter from the back trails, and rode between the twins, where Lady Taurus waited with a smile and a loaded rifle. She agreed at once. If innocents crossed Calhoun land, Calhoun's riders would see them through. At the wagons, Calhoun gave his word. Stay close, keep moving, do not wander. But deeper in, smoke rose where no smoke belonged. Gangs, miners, ranchers, and colonizers had slipped onto his acres, digging near Struthers Creek and marking out a town like they owned it. Calhoun rode into camp and gave one warning. This land is not yours to mine, claim, or colonize. Leave before sunrise. They laughed. They had heard the stories, but did not believe them. So Calhoun sent Bison Bill back to guard the wagon train, while he, Hunter, and Lady Taurus vanished into a hidden cave beneath the mountain's stone ribs. Inside waited the Holy Grail, shining with strange protection, and an old battle wagon fitted with a Gatling gun that fired golden bullets. Before dawn, they returned. Calhoun set a wide perimeter around the illegal settlement. Hunter watched the ridges, Lady Taurus guarded the creek. The Holy Grail glowed in the dust like a warning from heaven. At sunrise, Calhoun unleashed fury. Smoke bombs burst across camp, horses scattered. The golden Gatling roared over the plains, driving the trespassers from the land they had tried to steal. When the smoke drifted east, the settlement was broken, silent, and finished. Struthers Creek was protected again. Calhoun lifted the Holy Grail high, then returned the wagon and weapon to the secret cave. By sunset, he, Hunter, Lady Torres, and Bison Bill rejoined the wagon train and led them safely toward New Mexico. And behind them, Calhoun's land stood untouched, waiting for the next fool who forgot whose ground they crossed.
They called him Killer WB Calhoun, not because he hunted trouble, but because trouble rarely survived his warning. In the red dust of Arizona territory, where survey stakes crept across ancient ground, Calhoun carried a secret wrapped in worn leather. The Holy Grail, a relic said to reveal the true worth of any heart that touched it. Land barons wanted the Grail, soldiers wanted roads, prospectors wanted the hills. But the people of those sacred lands wanted only what had always been theirs, the right to remain. Beside Calhoun rode Hunter, sharp-eyed and steady, a tracker who read a broken twig like a headline. With them stood Bison Bill, a respected indigenous guardian who knew every canyon, spring, and burial ridge by name. When Colonel Voss and his hired riders arrived with maps, chains, and a Gatling gun, they expected fear. They found Calhoun. At sunrise, Bison Bill led families through hidden washes. Hunter cut the invaders' supply lines without firing a shot. Calhoun walked into the dust, left hand low, the Grail shining beneath his coat. The Gatling roared once, then fell silent when Calhoun turned it from the people toward an empty ridge, a thunderclap warning no one could ignore. Voss saw the Grail but could not lift it. Greed made it heavier than stone. Calhoun could. Because some treasures are not meant to be owned. They are meant to be protected. In 1860, the Arizona Territory was a place where a man's word could be tested before sunset. WB Calhoun owned 25,000 acres of hard desert land near Struthers Creek, watched over by the sharp rise of the Twin Mountains. One afternoon, Calhoun was repairing fence with his loyal hand Hunter when Bison Bill rode in fast, his horse lathered and his face grave. Bill had found a young indigenous woman near the falls above Struthers Creek. She was frightened, exhausted, and being hunted. Calhoun and Hunter dropped their tools and rode out. In the mountain's shadow, they met Patra, princess of the Chickasaw people. She said she was being forced to marry the leader of the Christian gang, outlaws who claimed to keep peace between settlers and native people, while ruling both through fear. Calhoun listened, then chose. No one was taking her by force on his land. He sent Bison Bill to guide Patra to a hidden cave high in the rocks, a sacred place known only to a trusted few. But trouble was already coming. Soon, Calhoun and Hunter faced two armed groups, Chickasaw leaders demanding Patra's return and the Christian gang wanting their bargain completed. Calhoun stood between them and the trail, warning them to leave his land and settle it without bloodshed. Both sides refused. So Calhoun and Hunter fell back into the valley between the Twin Mountains, drawing the riders away from Patra and into narrow ground where numbers mattered less than courage. From the ridge above, Bison Bill signaled. The trap was set. Warning shots cracked against the rocks, scattering horses, breaking the charge, and driving every man down before the fight became a massacre. When the dust cleared, Patra was safe. The outlaws had lost their power, and the tribal leaders saw Calhoun had protected her life, not stolen her voice. That day, WB Calhoun became more than a landowner. He became the shield of Struthers Creek, the man who stood against two armies to defend one woman's freedom.
They called him Killer WB Calhoun, but the name never told the whole truth. Out beyond the last railroad town, where red cliffs guarded 25,000 acres of dust, grass, river, and sacred stone, Calhoun kept watch. He was tall, wise, quiet, and left-handed, a black gunslinger whose draw was faster than panic. But Calhoun did not ride for trouble. He rode for peace. Hidden beneath his land, sealed inside an ancient chapel under the canyon hills, rested the Holy Grail. To thieves, it was power. To kings, it was legend. To Calhoun, it was a promise that no greedy hand would ever touch. Every morning, he rode the fence line in his dark coat, reading the land like scripture. Beside him rode Hunter, a muscular black man with a steady gun, sharp eyes, and loyalty stronger than iron. Hunter was not Calhoun's shadow. He was his brother in the work. When the wind changed, Hunter felt it first. Smoke lifted beyond the North Pass. Hooves thundered through forbidden ground. Purple fire flashed between the rocks, Raiders had come hunting the Grail, led by men who believed anything holy could be bought, stolen, or broken. Calhoun stopped in the open plain. Hunter checked his revolver and looked toward the supply wagon. Calhoun said one word: Gatling. Hunter moved like lightning, tore back the canvas, and rolled out WB Calhoun's Gatling gun, its brass barrel catching the last gold of sunset. The raiders laughed at two men standing against a storm. Calhoun raised his voice, calm and final. Turn back. This land is under peace. But greed never listens long. The first shot cracked the sky. Calhoun drew with his left hand, fast as a striking hawk, not to slaughter, but to stop the violence. Guns flew from raiders' hands. Blades dropped into the dust. Horses reared, but Calhoun stood steady. Hunter fired clean warning shots, then swung the Gatling toward the canyon wall, cutting stone loose to block the pass. No glory in blood, no joy in fear, just protection. When the raiders rushed the chapel hill, Calhoun was already there. Behind him, old stone doors glowed pale gold. Inside, the Holy Grail shone like dawn trapped in a cup. Calhoun's left hand rested near his holster. Hunter stood at his side, broad-shouldered and ready. The Holy Grail does not belong to thieves, Calhoun said, and this land does not kneel. The raiders broke and ran into the night. At sunrise, Calhoun repaired the gate. Hunter watered the horses. The Grail remained hidden, and peace returned across all 25,000 acres. They called him Killer. But the people knew better. WB Calhoun was the peacemaker.
They called him Killer WB Calhoun before the massacre. After it, folks whispered his name like a curse they feared might answer. Out in the red dust country, where mesas rose like tombstones and the sun bled orange across the sand, Calhoun owned 250 acres, 1 cabin, 3 horses, and a notebook full of promises. The last page bore his name, WB Calhoun, 1888. Then the riders came before dawn. Bandanas covered their faces, torches burned in their fists, guns hung low. But the strangest thing was the silence. No coyotes, no wind, not even the horses screamed, until the first flame touched the roof. By sunrise, the cabin was ash, the corral was empty, and the people Calhoun loved lay still beneath a sky too bright to mourn them. Calhoun should have died there too. One bullet found his chest, another tore through his side. Yet, when the sun dropped behind the mountain peak, he opened his eyes under black smoke and heard the dead calling from beneath the dirt. Not loud, close. They told him the trail was not finished. So Calhoun stood. Blood dried on his dark shirt, tied the white neckerchief around his throat, and lifted his revolver from the ashes. The metal was cold as gravestone. When he touched it, blue fire crawled along the barrel. From that night on, Calhoun did not follow tracks like other men. He followed sins. A boot print glowed red in the sand. A broken spur whispered its owner's name. A blood-stained deed beat like a heart inside a thief's coat. The first rider hid at a canyon well. Calhoun found him by the shadow running the wrong way. The man drew first, but his gun filled with black sand. Calhoun did not kill him. He made him speak. The massacre was bought. Landmen from the mountain peak wanted Calhoun gone. A killer named Griggs had taken the money, the horses, and the deed. One rider fled to a ruined mission, where dead bells rang when Calhoun arrived. Another buried himself under a freight wagon, praying to any god that would listen. Only the ghosts answered. Calhoun left them alive, bound, and shaking, because revenge was hungry, but justice had a harder face. At last, beneath a moon thin as a knife, Calhoun saw Griggs on the far mesa. 4 horses beside him, the stolen deed in his fist, a shack burning below. Griggs laughed and said dead men should stay buried. Calhoun stepped into the dust, eyes burning blue. "I was buried," he said, "but the land spit me back." When the final shot faded, thunder rolled from a cloudless sky.